For the second year in a row, Penn State has opened up the season with a big win over West Virginia. There's a lot to break down with three new coordinators making their debuts for the Nittany Lions. You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime. Welcome into Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Ryan Riskey, joined by Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and former Nittany Lion Steve Smear. Guys, a lot to break down. Big win for Penn State over West Virginia, and honestly, kind of seemed like a lot of deja vu from last year. 3 touchdown passes for Drew Aller, double-digit win against the same opponent.
Yeah, I think the passing game was terrific. If this is an indication of Andy Kotelnicki's work, I think they're off to a great start. But just overall, just a very impressive performance and a really good win at a place that, I think there was some concerns. I know this side of the panel thought it was pretty decisive. Joe Nastasi and I thought it would be a little closer. At least we all picked Penn State, but definitely a good start.
Yeah, Ryan, you mentioned the three coordinators, but obviously all eyes were on Andy Kotelnicki. He had won every single press conference. He was great when we would see him at practice, but we had no idea what this offense was going to do. They really showed nothing in this. We didn't get to see them scrimmage really in the spring. I don't count the blue-white game because that was so vanilla that we didn't get to see them scrimmage in preseason camp. So what was going to happen? There was a lot on the line. If they flopped, a lot of that goodwill goes out the window, and they certainly did not flop. I thought they checked off all the boxes of the things that he wanted to do after a little bit of a slow start, and I thought that was a great sign for him, for Aller, for the entire offense.
Yeah, and I honestly thought, Trey Wallace stepping up in a big way, because that wide receiver room for the second year in a row was one of the bigger question marks heading in. And like last year in week 1, Keandre Lambert-Smith stepped up. This time it was Trey Wallace. So I think we still want to see more guys, step up into the limelight in that wide receiver room.
I think as far as the defense is concerned, I looked up the 23 game, and in that game, they gained like 306 yards against our defense, and this year it was like 240-something. And they held them under 100 yards rushing, and I think I heard that was the first time that they've been held under 100 yards for a number of games. So they played really well defensively, and they played a different type of game, I think. They didn't blitz as much as they did with Diaz.
Yeah, to think, Steve, and you can speak to this, but what returned for the defense, I thought, was that kind of angry attitude that you had under Manny Diaz. So under Tom Allen, maybe it's not the exact same scheme, but the viciousness, you knew that. That's what your teams were all about. Yeah. But on the other side of it, I thought we saw some of that toughness and enthusiasm on offense as well. So to see it on both sides, I think, was a good thing.
What I liked about the offense was there were times in key moments these last couple years that they haven't been all that decisive. In what they wanted to do and how long it would take them to do it once they did get to the line. I thought yesterday there were some real examples, 4th down early, kind of in between field goal range. They got right up to the line of scrimmage, got the ball to Tyler Warren, one of your best players. And I just think that Kotelnicki and Aller, were just really in sync. As they missed a couple early, but as the game went on, I was just, really impressed, and just the clearly they know what they want to accomplish.
Well, and going back to what Ryan said, the things that Kotelnicki talked about were getting the ball in the hands of their best playmakers. Your 3 best non-QB offensive players going into the season all scored touchdowns, and the 2 running backs and Tyler Warren, getting the ball to players in space.
Yeah.
Did we see that with Harrison Walls and even Evans? And then number 3, being unpredictable. Drew Aller running. West Virginia had no idea. So those boxes were all checked. But yes, now they have to expand that to some other players, because if you look at the production numbers, the big names did well, but you didn't see a lot of the supporting cast, which I think we will see. They set a foundation, which I think is good, but now expanded.
Right, and one thing that I liked was how aggressive they were. I don't think anyone was expecting them to take a shot downfield to Amari Evans with 20 seconds left in the half to set up what looked to be a field goal, and then on the next play you go to the end zone and Trey Wallace makes an acrobatic back shoulder catch.
They were in a man off defense too, which is surprising at that point in the game. You know, you're normally in a zone, a deep zone, and keep everything in front of you. And for some reason they played man back there, and he got lost.
Yeah, I'm sure West Virginia has to be kicking themselves in some situations. I mean, this score really could have been worse. Penn State, kind of lost every officiating, either review or call. But, there's West Virginia hanging in the football game, and they allow basically Penn State to go up the field in 30 seconds for 70 yards. If it's 13-6 going into that halftime delay, it might be different.
Well, that's the thing. So you go into the weather delay, and people just didn't come back. They thought the game was over, and pretty much it was. But that's how big that was. And then the other thing I liked, they come out, and unlike Michigan State a couple years ago, boom, they score again.
Yeah.
So you put touchdowns on either side of that, that's 14 points in that game, and that's not only scoring, it's scoring at the key moments.
And James has even talked about that in the past. He wants to get that final score before the half, and then he wants the ball coming out of the half, because those 4 minutes before the half and after the half begins, those are key moments. And instead, that's a 14-point swing right there.
Yeah, and I think the commitment to the run, they were so efficient when you look at it. Aller only threw the ball 17 times, and yet they got the ball to Singleton. They were committed to it. They were decisive when they wanted to bring Pabula in. So a lot of good things to build on.
Yeah, so anyways, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to discuss all the personnel changes that the Nittany Lions made, getting guys involved, and also dissecting the run performance. You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. Ryan Riskey joined by Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and Steve Smear. Guys, we just finished up talking about the offense, but I think now we want to touch a little on the defense. And Steve, as a former defensive player, what were some things that you liked from this defense in Tom Allen's debut?
Well, I think number one, early in the season, tackling is usually bad, and this team tackled really well. I couldn't believe how well they tackled. Their safeties, of course, Reed did a heck of a job. He had did a heck of a game. Also with the linebackers, DeLuca and King and Diaz were just, Rojas were just really tremendous. They stopped the run. They played really well against the run. And our tackles, how many short yardage plays we stopped. It's really difficult in short yardage to stop 1 yard being made, and they did it a couple times. On the one drive where they scored in the first or second quarter, they had to make two tremendous catches. Fox caught one, and the tight end caught one. On the second, and they scored 3 points. On the second one, we actually stopped them. Fourth down, we stopped them, and they got an opportunity to kick a field goal.
Right, you had replay officials.
Yeah.
Said that they got there, even though it didn't even look like he broke the line of scrimmage.
Steve, you know what I loved was the depth of the defensive line. It's a hot day. In the first quarter, you have Alonzo Ford in there. We didn't even see Beeman, who's a former starter at tackle, until the second quarter. They're rotating Amin Vanover in there. Smith Vilbert comes in.
Smith Vilbert had a tremendous, I don't know if you, he beat that tackle and hit the quarterback. It was a really great move on his part. It was
but they committed to that. They committed to that in the first quarter. So when you're seeing plays being made later in the game, that's Steve, you could speak to that. Being fresh as a D lineman late in the game when you're going against those guys?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunities are for everybody in there that comes in. They get an opportunity to play and make a play, and they're doing that. He's got so much, so many people to rotate in that everybody's getting a chance to get some. So
did Izzard start? He was in there the first series.
No, he did not start.
Right, so he was another guy.
Yeah, it was Devon J. Thomas and Zane Durant.
Right.
So, and then, I mean, you look at a guy like Vilbert, I mean, man, he did not play in a regular season game since 2001 for a variety of reasons, medical and then some other things.
And he's a guy, though, Mark. 3 sacks in the Outback Bowl, and we thought we were going to be seeing him, and we haven't seen him since.
That's the one time we've seen him, but the stick-to-itiveness of this guy. He's got his degree. He decided to stick with it. If you look at him at 6'7", 290 pounds, he has an opportunity at that next level. So now all of a sudden, you have a COVID year guy who's looking at this as his one shot to get into the NFL. There's a little bit of motivation there.
Yeah. Somebody, it might have been you, predicted him to have a breakout season here.
Well, but some people did.
That
Who
move,
was it? You?
that move that he made on the tackle was incredible. It was a really good, defensive end move.
Yeah, and I liked how the secondary kept things in front of him. The quarterback's pretty good. I thought West Virginia, again.
That kid's tough.
The receivers let him down at times. But I think they're going to be pretty good in the Big 12.
Interesting that they started with 3 safeties, which I think you're going to see more and more of with that line position. And I think if you look at the snap counts, Jalen Reed, I think he played 51 snaps or 50. I think he missed a snap or 2 because he got dinged up a little bit. But I think almost 2/3 of his snaps were in the box. So you have a guy out there who's running around. I mean, like when he tracked Green down after the bad snap, I mean, he is like a guided missile. Yeah. And he can do that, and he can also drop back in coverage. You mentioned him, Steve. What a heck of a player.
Yeah, I thought he had the best game of all the safeties. And in fact, I thought he was the #1 defensive player on the field. But we also got really good linebacker play.
Yeah.
I mean, King had a number of tackles. DeLuca made a big play on a short yardage play.
Yeah.
And Rojas was, he's a player.
Yeah, for his first start, he's going to get better and better and better. That's the guy who came to Penn State at 210 pounds, and now he's pushing 250. Yeah, so it's crazy.
And right now we're really seeing the amount of depth that they have after graduating a plethora of players to the NFL. They're just able to rotate guys in and out, as we mentioned, keeping guys fresh late in games.
Yeah. You know what I'd be interested, I couldn't tell. I don't know how many times they played with just 2 linebackers and how many times they played with 3. But if they played with 2, they really held up well against the run. And I didn't get a chance to really hone in on that. But because in talking to some people, everybody was kind of concerned. Are they going to be able to play with just two linebackers? And if they did,
Well, I think Reed lets you do that. That's what I think one of the keys is. One area of concern, though, is Tamir Robinson was bumped up. I think he's a guy they were looking at as being in that linebacker rotation, so you can keep guys fresh. So let's see what his situation is. He got banged up on special teams. We didn't see him. Otherwise, we pretty much only saw the guys you talk about and Tyler Elsdon. Elsdon came in.
I thought he did some good job.
He didn't hurt us. He didn't hurt us.
Yeah, they kind of put him in short yardage, and he stuck his nose in there. Yeah.
Right, and going back to the short yardage, even like the touchdown that West Virginia scored didn't even look like the guy crossed the line.
He didn't.
Exactly. They could have been limited to 3 points.
Yeah.
Right. Were it not for the officials, the Big 12 crew also.
Yeah, you talk about the linesman and the replay guy. What were they doing? It was unbelievable. The people on TV are saying, "Hey, he didn't make it," and they're watching the film, and I don't know what they're seeing.
Right, and almost I think, even if you're like James Franklin, you can chalk that up as, you did get the stop there when you're kind of looking at things.
Yeah, that's great, but fortunately for Penn State, it wasn't a super tight game. The call that really bothered me was the targeting on Singleton. How do you wave that off? I just don't even comprehend that. Listen, I get officials making mistakes, but this is the safety of both kids. That linebacker could have been injured on that too. How does that called and then you wave it off? I don't get it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And speaking of Singleton, he had a big game with 114 yards on the ground, and we're going to get to that. But right now we have to take a quick break. You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. Ryan Riskey joined by Mark Brennan, Neil Rodell, and Steve Smear. And guys, we just touched on Nick Singleton before the break, just in the targeting penalty that ended up being kind of waved off. And as you guys said, it's a safety concern for both players.
Yeah, you just can't do that. Fortunately, Nick was fine, and fortunately for Nick, since the end of last season, he's been fine. Since the coordinator change, he's been like a different running back. In 2 of the last 4 games, he's rushed for over 100 yards. He didn't hit 100 yards up until the point where the coordinator change took place. So clearly they're figuring it out that there are different ways to do things with him, and I think they're doing a good job. And I also think the fact that they did work down the field a little bit, opened things up for the running backs. Katron Allen actually had more carries in that game than Nick Singleton
didn't
did.
gain a lot of yards. He did have a good play on.
But you're going to see that, I think. I think you're going to see them flip-flopping.
But I liked how they were committed to getting Singleton to the edge and into space, and that was good. And I put a little more stock in this game than I know we talked about the success that offense had late in the last couple games last year. But you were talking about Rutgers and Michigan State.
Right, but he wasn't getting there against the lesser teams on the schedule last year, Neil.
Because remember, there were 3 games last year. Penn State was playing the team who was the worst rushing defense in the Big Ten, and they struggled to run the ball.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and one thing that I did like with Singleton, as you said, it looked like they started to use him the way they might have a couple of years ago when he was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. He had 2 carries for more than 40 yards, the long touchdown. And last year, his long carry was only 24 yards.
Right. Yeah, he looked like he had a little bit of an extra gear like he had his freshman year.
Yeah, and that's a guy who's pushing 230 pounds. I mean, it's hard to. He and Katron are both big backs.
And what about the big plays? We had 4. In the game we had 7 all year.
Yep,
last
they had
year,
4 plays of 40 or more yards, and so it was a completely different looking offense.
Hey, we probably ought to hit on how they handled the weather delay, which is frustrating for everybody. And they clearly learned something from the experience at Michigan State 5 years ago already.
Yeah, Neil was frustrated.
Sure I was.
He went back to the buffet like 6 different times.
I started writing. Nothing was going to change.
I was upset because I was taping it, and it went over the time. So then I couldn't tape it, that upset me.
But in all seriousness, one of the things that I've always said about James Franklin is he's such a creature of habit, and I think that works to their strength in so many instances. It's why they rarely have letdowns against teams that they're supposed to beat. It may be a close game, but there are also episodes like during COVID when they didn't adapt, when they were taken out of their structure, or like the Michigan State game in 2017 where they didn't adapt. What did he do? He learned from that. They kept all of that in their back pocket for the last 7 years, and they knew exactly how to handle it when it went down this time.
Right, and especially being on the road, James said after the game, like the away facilities are generally a lot smaller and tougher to navigate through.
Yeah, and they also said that they knew it was a possibility, it had been forecast. So, hey.
But you have to take into, when we talk about Tom Allen not having to worry about all the different things, that's the stuff as a head coach that you have to worry about. And it was bad against Michigan State way back then, but they learned from it and succeeded. And I think just, again, I'll just say the fact that you score before and after that is just massive.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think kind of one of the things to look at is just kind of the way that, even though they had the weather delay, they were still able to score after, because James, his thing is scoring after the break anyways, and they were able to go with that long touchdown run to Singleton. And kind of one more thing I'd like to touch on is the use of Bo Pribula.
Yeah.
Just like James said, and Andy Kolodnicki said, we want our best players on the field, and they were mixing and matching packages, having Bo run. One play we saw Drew line up as a wide receiver.
How hard is that to defend a running quarterback?
Well, I think the options are the guy can break your containment. You've got to keep containment. Somebody has him. Somebody has the dive man. Somebody has the pitch man. It's difficult, and a lot of times what will happen is that the defensive end will come down, the line and the quarterback will go around him. Nobody to tackle him, and he's for 10, 15, 20 yards.
Did you see anything that you didn't like?
I would like to see Allen be able to get more involved. No, he had plenty of carries. It's just they weren't able to get him going on the ground. He did have a nice play on the touchdown reception.
You mean on offense or
anywhere? Did you see anything?
Yeah,
it's the third segment here.
Yeah, I thought way too many penalties on defense in the second half. It looked to me as if Abdul Carter, as Ed DeChelles used to say, was looking to put 10 pounds of potatoes into a 5-pound bag. He was
Eddie D reference.
He was a little bit over enthusiastic. He's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But he looked like he was trying too hard. But the penalties, that really. I mean, it wasn't going to be a game anyway, but that's the only reason that I think West Virginia did anything.
And I agree. I mean, there were 4 times they lined up off sides that were called. I know they gave him a shot late in the game, which I thought was good, but Zahedek missed from 46, and he's got to make the next one or two.
I hope they stick with him. Last year they went away from him. That kid has all the talent in the world, but the fact of the matter is he's 0 of 3 all of them against West Virginia.
Virginia.
But I think you have a couple games here.
Yeah.
He's a scholarship player. I don't think you could give up. Give him another couple games, and maybe he gets into that groove. And if not, you're going to have to look in a different direction.
Yeah, unfortunately, guys, there was a lot to like from this game. So with that, we're going to go to our final break. And when we come back, we crown our Nitwit of the Week.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Oh, and look at that. The host has gone 1-0.
Congratulations, pal.
Yep.
Even though it wasn't you. Good job, Andrew. Nice job, Andrew.
Hey, we ended up winning last year, too.
That's right.
You did.
We did. So I guess that means I have to go first for Bowling Green. I'm
does.
going to say Penn State wins 45-10. I think we see some more players get involved in the offense, specifically wide receivers besides Trey Wallace.
Yeah, I think one of the good things out of that game, this may sound weird, is that, the penalties, they maybe didn't get the ball to as many people as you might would have liked on offense. I think there are a lot of teaching moments. I think you come out of that, and I think that's good for a coaching staff. So I think you're going to see improvement from week 1 to week 2. Back in 1998, 1998, Penn State beat Bowling Green 48-3 for Joe Paterno's 300th victory. I'm going 48-3 again for James Franklin's 90th victory at Penn State.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
Well, ironically, it was Joe's 200th and 300th.
There you go.
Wow,
Yeah.
you guys are like an
Well,
encyclopedia.
you mentioned getting the ball to other guys, and Fleming. We got to see what happens here. Eventually, he didn't have any catches. I don't think he had a target.
He had as many reps as Harrison Walsh, though. Incredible. So he was out there. They just have to figure a way to get him the ball. Sorry, Neil.
So
but
no,
that was
we'll
a
see
good,
how
good
that
stat.
shakes out. It also came up afterwards that they got 4 straight home games now, and really 5 straight weeks at home because you mix in an open date. So you got to manage that type of potential malaise against a non-conference schedule. I think that I'm going to go big this time. Penn State 50, Bowling Green 10.
All right. And Steve?
54-14.
All right. And Steve, just letting you know, there's some pressure on you because last year the guests did not win a single week.
It's rigged.
Hey, Steve, good to see you.
I don't know about that.
Good to see you. Been such a friend of the show. Drove 3 hours again.
I never missed a net.
We always love having you.
Never
All
missed
right,
a
well, we appreciate you coming on, Steve. So it's unanimous. All 4 of us are picking Penn State to win big next week. Thank you so much for watching another edition of Nittany Nation Overtime. We'll be back on at the same time next week after Penn State's game against Bowling Green.
Thanks for watching WTAJ's Nittany Nation Overtime.